like the least natural fit in the world. A handful of the world's fastest and most skilled race car drivers let loose around the twisting streets of a European city. 750 brake horsepower, single-seat, high-performance race cars. Despite the slightly unhinged nature of the concept, the Monaco Grand Prix has been thrilling race fans since 1929, when British racer William Grover Williams won the inaugural race in his Bugatti. The Formula One Grand Prix of Monaco is hugely popular and extremely crowded and expensive. But for the same atmosphere and a bit of nostalgia, attending the Monaco Historic Grand Prix is a much more relaxed affair, allowing you to get up close to these magnificent machines. The historic Grand Prix vintage car races through the streets of the fabled Principality are held every 2 years in the streets of Monaco, 1 week before the annual May running of the Formula One Grand Prix. It is a marvellous display of 60 years of racing cars. Automobiles from historic eras in different classes career around the modern Monaco circuit between the Armco barriers. While the technical precision of the modern Formula One car is an amazing thing, it's a testament to the love of racing to see drivers throwing these mostly private-owned and sometimes multi-million-dollar one-of-a-kind museum pieces around the tight, narrow streets on the razor edge of control. The nearest airport to my destination is Nice, France. I hitched a lift in a friend's taxi to Monaco. Monaco, glamorous, expensive, exclusive, hot, sexy, and during race week, all about the badge. The man I'm here to see is Team Gemini co-driver Phil Hooper. I've just had a phone call from Phil to say that they've been delayed on the track racing in Monaco due to the rain, so we're going to meet in the Chinese restaurant in Antibes. And we're planning the next 2 days racing at the Vintage Grand Prix in Monaco. You don't often get this, the waiter has actually picked up the camera and is filming it for us.
Hello guys.
And also discussing some of the opposition.
Francois Fillon with the Ferrari team. Nick Mason, Chris Rea, probably the Prime Minister of France.
The Principality playground of oligarchs, princes, playboys and kings gives up its world-renowned racetrack, and the Monaco Vintage Grand Prix comes to town. Before setting off to Monaco the next morning, we popped into the office to pick up some earplugs.
We're backing right onto the Formula One cars, so when they start up those things, the noise is just extreme.
And I caught up with Phil's background.
My first TVR, which was TVR 2500M, which is a fantastic rally car. I started doing historic rallying, closed road stuff, against the clock, so it was a real rally down here. I did that for several years. This TVR is quite rare in France. Someone said, okay, I've seen this with a road liaison racing car parked, sticking out of some garage somewhere. It was a TVR Grand Tourer Mark III, but it was covered in tyres and Maserati seats. It was just a piece of junk. And I read an article about the 6 TVR Grand Tourer lightweights that they'd made in 1963. I thought, bloody hell, I wonder if that's a lightweight. So I went back and I measured it up, bought it. This guy contacted me from England who was writing a blog and said, you've really hit a jackpot, because this is XPG1, which is a Paddy Gaston car, lightweight. Actually is the only TVR ever to have won points in the World Sports Car Championships. But when he raced my car abroad, used to put one of the registrations of the other cars on my car and then go and race it. I registered it myself about 7 or 8 years ago with a fake MOT that I bought in England.
There's much more of this stuff to come from Phil, but right now It's down to Monaco for the Vintage Grand Prix. These are the cars and names that make up the sporting pedigree of this event. The history of Grand Prix racing unfolds before us in a noisy cavalcade of spitting, roaring, temperamental and powerful machines. Driven by a motley collection of competitive yet amiable characters.
Hard work.
Right.
Not much risk.
Of course, it's not all champagne, super yachts and supermodels. In fact, most of the women here are part of the team. The glitz and glamour is replaced by grit and hammer. The small part-time teams and enthusiastic helpers get their cars ready to race. It's still not a poor man's sport. These classic vehicles cost a lot of money, and racing them is an expensive hobby. There's more of the old-style gentleman racer approach, with more emphasis on determination, hammers and spanners, than a reliance on the latest technology. There's also a lot of humour, banter and camaraderie among the teams.
Okay.
Yeah.
In Goodwood. No, you can't get this.
The team owner is usually the driver, who in our case is a little publicity shy. There's an intense pride and perfectionism, bringing the best out of these venerable machines that all share the same pedigree and purpose. They were built to win races. Practice on the first day went very well for Team Gemini. The boss got up to 5th place on the starting grid, and the mechanics were happy that the tiny little mini engine had performed so well against bigger engined cars. Now came the task of prepping the car for the following day's racing. While Phil sits in the cockpit pressing a couple of pedals, Chief Mechanic Malcolm, ably assisted by his girlfriend who runs a tool company, get on with the real hard work of the job. These are the guys who do the hard work all the time.
Just fully prep it, go all over the front brake, clean it, make sure it's spotless, polish it, take the wheels off, clean them, torque them all back up, just make sure it's ready to roll. And then tomorrow we go do it all over again.
So while we left Malcolm and the mechanics poring over the statistics and prepping the car for tomorrow's big race, Phil and I grabbed a late lunch trackside at Stars and Bars, watching other people go through their paces for the day, and talked about what we'd achieved. Then it was back home to Antibes, ready for the big race, the Monaco Vintage Grand Prix tomorrow. 7:30 a.m. and we're just on the way to Monaco again. Isn't that right, Phil? Prior to living in France, becoming a race driver and running an AC company servicing super yachts, Phil has travelled all over the world, first with the British Merchant Navy and later as a charter skipper in the Caribbean, where he rubbed shoulders with many of the rich and famous.
And Mick Jagger comes next to him and he's having a piss in the urinal next to him. Jagger invited him back to his table for the evening. Where was David Bowie and Iman and Jerry Hall and the bunch at the time. But he knew my boat because it used to come in every week. Bamble goes, Phil, come over here. And there's Mick Jagger eating with him at the table. So there I sit down with him. It was brilliant.
So leaving the rock stars aside for a moment, we headed on down to Monaco for the race day of the Monaco Vintage Grand Prix. It's been the culmination of many weeks' work and a lot of long days and nights. Was now concentrated in the hands of one man, the driver. Last minute checks complete, the boss fired up the beloved car and took it to join the others on the starting grid. Now it's all up to him and how well he can drive it.
Malk from TTP Performance, who looks after all our cars, has just strapped Ralph in. In fact, he insists that I'm on the pit lane with him from the very first time he did the Monaco Historic Grand Prix. The day I don't get nervous before I start a race, I will stop. The tyres we use are period tyres. They are 65 compound, everyone uses them. And basically they're shit. you know, we could never have afforded to do this when we were younger. People out there who are still racing, there's people at this race who are 70. We do it now because we can, and while we can, we will.
After a relatively gentle rolling start, the safety officials are happy and the race begins in earnest. The vintage motors tear into the track and are shown no mercy by their determined pilots.
No, you know where your braking points are after a lap or two. You know how you can brake or where you're going to brake. BMC 1000cc, basically a mini engine. It revs quite high and it's revving to, I mean, I think its limiter is actually at 8.5. You've got to have really good reflexes. You've got to have a very, very hard right foot. It's a very interesting circuit. It is very tight. It's very difficult to overtake, especially in a situation like this where there were 48 cars out on the circuit. The first 10, 15, maybe 20 cars are driven by people who know how to drive them very well, but because the cars in front of him are much more powerful. The adrenaline is just pumping like hell, and what he's thinking about is, I can see a car in front of me, I'm going to try and take him. Because we're racing with ex-Formula 1 drivers out there, you know. The tunnel's quite a scary place, huh? Well, you've got cement walls on each side of you. You know, you've got this tube that's pushing you out. Suddenly the sun hits you in the eyes and blinds you. There's a hot fire running through your head saying, I've got to get that next one, and then I've got to get the one after that. You know, you see them getting a bit closer and a bit closer and a bit closer, and you think to yourself, yes, I've got him, I'm going to get him. I mean, we're amateurs, but we're not pure amateurs. And then you think, okay, where am I actually going to take him now? Where's the best place? Where is he not taking it right? What lines is he not doing as well as I can do better? He was definitely a happy bunny, as was I. I was very proud of him, very proud. It's probably the drive of his life.
After a grueling race against faster cars with bigger engines and larger teams, the boss in his 1966 Gemini roars in to be first in class and fifth overall. A stupendous event.
First in class. Fifth overall.
It's all over after a couple of hours for this team.
What a bloody race that was.
There she goes.
Go.
It drove like a demon. Just brilliant. Oh man, that was a drive and a half.
We went for a quick beer to celebrate in the infamous Stars and Bars.
Monaco. Cheers.
Later, the boss got cleaned up a little, and everyone was treated to a fine lunch at a trackside restaurant, where tactics, experiences and anecdotes were swapped, as others still racing formed up outside the windows. In touring cars from the 50s, and in the more recent Formula 1s from the 70s and 80s. The noise is deafening, the competition ferocious, and the atmosphere thoroughly enjoyable. Competitive and enjoyable. I look forward to joining up with Team Gemini next year for another day of racing the historic grand names of the sport. In Monaco, sometimes it's not just the sun that shines, it's the people who make it.